Hello everyone, my name is Acharchelle Charles from the Irvington Public Library, and today I'll be reading The Raven and the Fox, retold by Roberto Piumini and illustrated by Rafaella Bolaffio. Once upon a time, there was a large raven with soot black feathers and a gray beak. One day, he was flying around in search of something to eat. As he flew, he carefully studied the countryside below. Every now and then, a rush of air carried the raven up, higher and higher. From there, the raven could see all across the land. Along the edge of the forest, a red fox with a long, fluffy tail was also searching for food. The fox sniffed at the ground, his ears twitched, ready to catch the slightest sound. Seeing the shadow of the raven flying above him, the fox lifted his head. He watched the raven soar, almost in envy. Suddenly, the delicious aroma of cheese drifted over from a nearby field. The fox turned toward the smell and saw a peasant man sound asleep under a tree with his hat over his eyes. On a nearby rock, a napkin was carefully spread out. A lovely piece of cheese sat on top of it. The fox carefully crept forward. Human beings could be dangerous, but the smell of that cheese was irresistible. The fox was almost drooling with anticipation. With just a few steps to go, the fox stopped to watch the man's feet. This was always a good way to tell whether a human was sleeping or just pretending. The feet were completely still. The man was truly asleep. Just as the fox was about to jump forward, a shadow passed swiftly on the ground in front of him. The raven flew down to the piece of cloth. Without even folding his wings, he opened his beak, plucked up the cheese, and flew off. The fox watched, motionless. Only his nose followed the flight of the raven. When he saw the raven fly into the forest, he darted away in that direction. The raven perched on a high branch to get into a comfortable position so he could eat his cheese. Meanwhile, the fox slowly walked into the woods, looking like he didn't have a care in the world. Then he lifted his nose and spoke. "Oh, look, it's the raven, just my luck." The raven peered down over the piece of cheese. The fox sat and gazed up at the raven. His tail swept the ground lazily. "You know, Raven," said the fox, "I've always asked myself why you aren't the one to be called bird of paradise, instead of that feathery creature with the soft tail." Now curious, the raven tilted his head. The fox continued, "I'm not talking about flying. There are other birds who can fly like you. No, I'm talking about your feathers, 10 times blacker and shinier than the blackest rabbit. And then there's your beak. It's like a gray pearl." The raven took a small step sideways. He was about to lay down the piece of cheese so he could thank the fox, but there was no room. Suddenly, the fox brought his tail straight up into the air. "Now I understand why you're not called bird of paradise," he shouted. The raven took another step sideways, waiting. The fox's tail went back to moving lazily over the grass. "The fact is that you have no voice," said the fox. "That must be the reason." The raven flapped his wings nervously. What? He thought. No voice? Nonsense! The raven opened his beak wide, and a great caw echoed throughout the forest. He even woke the man sleeping in the field, and the piece of cheese fell straight down, like a rock, right in front of the fox. The fox grinned. Ah, wait, he declared, putting out a paw to hold down the cheese. That's not the reason either. You've got a voice. What you're missing is a brain. And with that, the fox picked up the cheese and trotted off to his den. The raven sat there for a moment, his beak still wide open with surprise. Finally, the raven shut his beak, and all he was left with was a sour taste of having been tricked. The end. Thank you everyone for joining me today, and I will see you next time. Bye!